And so in terms of self-talk, because you kind of alluded to this, that voice
Yeah.
that's in our heads, which often can be, I'm not good enough, or they're judging me because I'm quiet, or I need to just push myself out a bit more, but I don't really want to, or, I'm lacking energy for this. I want to go home, whatever it is. So yeah, talk to self-talk for me, please. How can it make things better?
Yeah. So without betraying any kind of confidence, and the way I talk about my clients is in the most sort of general terms, but like I worked with a male introvert during the pandemic, who's quite a senior, very senior. Everybody was having like Zoom work calls, of course, because nobody could go anywhere. And somebody asked him at the beginning of a meeting, "What did you do at the weekend?" And he completely froze. And later on, he told me, he was like, I felt like such an idiot because I had actually done something that weekend. It was like one of the, those times when you couldn't really do. And then the self-talk can really, really start. It's like everyone's going to think you're a weirdo. People are going to think you're a loser. And then the thing could start to loop, right? So if they all think I'm a weirdo, then I won't get any more work. For some people, it can loop, that self-talk can loop into quite disastrous kind of areas, right? You could start to catastrophize it, like, you know, I'm such a weirdo, no one likes me, I'm never going to get at work again, and I'm going to end up sleeping under a cardboard box in the street. And it's quite a common thing that people have. So it's completely understandable that we do this to ourselves, like calling yourself names like that, like in an unhelpful way. Actually, what you're trying to do is give yourself a bit of a slap, right? You're trying to say, come on, buck up, pull
Mm,
yourself together, Shola. Like, what's wrong with you?
mm,
But what actually ends up happening again is that it basically adds tension. There's a poster of the nervous system behind me. Calling yourself names like that
mm,
adds so much tension to your nervous system, psychologically and physically, that it's actually really unhelpful. And I alluded to this earlier on. So self-compassion is better. So some strategies you can prepare for those moments where most introverts hate that thing of where somebody suddenly puts them on the spot, like at work, for example, like ask them a question they weren't expecting, a curveball, even something really innocuous, like what did you do at the weekend, right? And it can become like a huge deal that they then start to make into a bigger deal in their head, right? And so there are strategies that you can have in your back pocket so you can prepare for those moments. So in those moments that you don't feel like so deficient, like lots of my clients, that's how they feel. They're very successful usually outwardly, but they feel like there's something inherently wrong with them because of how they react in those moments.
mm. So what sort of things, if we're talking about self-talk, if you were working with somebody, because often what I hear, and this has worked for me as well, I don't do it so much now, but if you're going to networking, for example, before you go, look at the paper and come up with one story that you're happy to talk about. So you've just got a few pre-prepared things that you can put on the table. How would you advise somebody? What kind of things would you tell them to tell themselves?
For the self-talk, I think I've got some tips as well for the networking. So dealing with negative self-talk, and Esther, whose book launch we went to, she says, oh, like call your inner critic. So that's what you're dealing with, right? You're dealing with your inner critic that calls you names, right? So then you can call them whatever, moaning Minnie, like in Harry Potter or whatever, like someone who's always got a downer on you, downer Debbie, because usually what that voice is trying to do is actually trying to keep you safe, right? That voice is sort of saying, well, Shola, come on, like, come on, back up a bit, because otherwise people will think you're weird, right? So
Mm,
that voice is actually in a weird kind of way trying to help you, right? But most of the time, what it does, especially when it starts to really spin out, it says, nobody likes you, you'll never fit in, you're never going to amount to anything. It's almost trying to stop you from getting your hopes up too much. So it's sort of a protective thing, but it's usually trying to protect you just very much from a fear-based thing rather than like what's actually possible for you. I recommend clients do this if they suffer from this. Like, let's face it, most people do. Give it a name and then say, all right, moaning Minnie, like, thanks for your input, but I think I've got this. Like, so you actually sort of engage, you sort of acknowledge that voice and say, yeah, I see what you're trying to do. I understand you're trying to keep me safe, but let me try that, let me try this strategy, whatever it might be.